The wind on the Great Steppe doesn't just howl, it whispers. It tells stories of an age when the earth trembled under the feet of giants. An age of ice, where survival was a battle fought every single day against a world of frost and hunger. The wind whispers of the herds, mountains of fur and flesh, living glaciers of power that carved their way across the frozen plains. The woolly mammoth. And it whispers the name of one man, a man who, armed with only a sharpened stone and a will as hard as flint, stood alone against a thunderous tide of fur and fury. This is the lost legend of the day a single man made mammoths fear humans. Before we get to the heart of the legend, we need to understand the world that forged it. For tens of thousands of years, during the late Pleistocene, humanity was not the master of this planet. We were just another part of a brutal, beautiful food chain. A healthy adult woolly mammoth, weighing up to 6 tons and standing 9 to 11 feet tall at the shoulder, had little to fear. But they weren't invincible. While a full-grown mammoth was a fortress of muscle and hide, the young, the old, or the weak were vulnerable to packs of cave hyenas, wolves, and massive Ice Age cats. These were not just animals, they were walking ecosystems, perfectly adapted to the frigid landscapes of the Mammoth Steppe that stretched across the northern hemisphere. Their dense undercoat and shaggy outer layer were the ultimate winter coat, and their incredible curved tusks, which in the largest males could reach up to 13 feet, were formidable weapons and essential tools for clearing snow to find food. For our ancient ancestors, these creatures were both a source of terror and the ultimate prize. Archaeological sites from Europe to Siberia show an undeniable link between early humans and these giants. We've found their spear points lodged between mammoth ribs and massive bone piles that testify to successful hunts. Some groups in Eastern Europe even used their colossal bones and tusks to build shelters against the punishing Ice Age winds. But let's be absolutely clear. Every piece of scientific evidence we have points to one conclusion. Hunting a mammoth was almost never a job for one person. It was a monumental task that required the coordinated effort of an entire community. At famous sites like Predmosty in what is now the Czech Republic, the evidence paints a picture of epic kill sites where bands of hunters may have worked together with breathtaking strategy and courage. It's believed they used fire and noise to drive mammoths into natural traps like cliffs or bogs. Some recent studies even question whether throwing a spear was the only or even primary method. An alternative theory suggests a technique where hunters would plant a heavy spear into the ground at an angle, letting the mammoth's own charging momentum do the deadly work. It was a battle of wits, a group effort where strategy triumphed over brute strength. A single kill could feed a clan for weeks, its hide used for clothing, and its ivory for tools and art. So, if science tells us that only a group could fell a giant, where does the story of a lone hunter come from? Why does this idea persist? Because some stories aren't just for the history books. Some stories are legends. And legends exist to tell us not just what happened, but what we're capable of. This is not a story you'll find carved on a cave wall. It's a story carried on the wind, a myth born in the heart of a hunter staring into a blizzard with hunger gnawing at his belly. It's the story of a man whose name is lost to time, but whose spirit echoes in our own DNA. We'll call him Kale. Kale wasn't a chief or a shaman, he was a hunter, and a damn good one. But his clan was starving. The reindeer and horse herds they relied on had vanished, spooked by a sudden shift in the weather. For days, the only thing they'd hunted was disappointment. The children grew weak, and the elders fell silent. Hope was a dying ember. Then, one morning, Kale saw them. A dark line on the horizon, moving through the swirling snow. Not reindeer, something much, much bigger. A herd of mammoths. It was a sign, either a death sentence or a promise of life. The clan was too weak for a proper hunt. The men who would normally form the hunting party were gaunt, their strength gone. Organizing a drive or digging a trap was impossible. The elders declared it a fool's errand, an omen to be ignored. But Kale saw the desperation in his child's eyes. He saw the fading light in the eyes of his family. And in that moment, a different kind of fire was lit inside him. He would go alone. It was an insane idea. Suicide. His family pleaded with him. The clan shaman warned him that to face the great beasts without the tribe's strength was an act of defiance against the spirits. But Kale's will was a stone that couldn't be moved. He sharpened his flint spear point to a razor's edge. He checked the leather bindings on its heavy yew shaft. With only a single water skin and a sliver of dried meat, he set out. He wasn't just hunting for food, he was hunting for a miracle. He was challenging fate itself. Following the herd was a lesson in humility. Each of Kale's footprints was a whisper in the snow. Each of the mammoths was a thunderclap. The sheer scale of the creatures was something you could only understand in their presence. They moved with a slow, ponderous grace, their trunks sweeping aside snow, their deep rumbles vibrating through the frozen ground and right into Kale's bones. For 2 days he stalked them, a shadow on the edge of their world. He learned their rhythm. He watched the wise old matriarch who led the herd with absolute authority. He saw the rowdy young males testing their strength, and the calves protected at the center of a living fortress of fur and muscle. Any historical hunter would target those calves. The smart hunter looks for the weak, the old, the one left behind. But Kale wasn't a historical hunter. He was a man driven by desperation, and desperation makes you see the world differently. He knew he couldn't take on the whole herd. He couldn't set a trap or start a stampede. He had one spear and one chance. He needed to separate one from the others. Not a calf, which would be too fiercely protected. Not one of the massive bulls, whose rage would be suicide to provoke. He needed a target that was vital, one whose distress would cause a moment of confusion, a crack in their defenses. His eyes settled on a young adult, old enough to be a challenge, but young enough to be reckless. It grazed slightly apart from the others, using its developing tusks to dig at a patch of frozen moss. This was his chance. The wind was in his favor, carrying his scent away. The swirling snow gave him cover. Every fiber of his being, every lesson taught to him since he could walk, screamed that this was wrong. But the image of his starving family burned brighter than his fear. He moved not like a man, but like a predator, a wolf, a lion, a creature of pure, focused intent. His heart hammered against his ribs, a drumbeat for the battle to come. He gripped his spear, the wood smooth and familiar in his freezing hands. He was no longer just Kale. He was an answer to a prayer. He was a weapon forged by hunger and love. The moment of truth arrived not with a roar, but with a sudden, chilling silence. Kale broke from cover, his shout a sharp crack in the vast stillness. The young mammoth looked up, its large, intelligent eyes blinking in surprise. It was more curiosity than alarm. This tiny, two-legged creature was no threat. It had never known a threat from a single being. Kale didn't charge. He held his ground. He made himself a target. The young mammoth snorted, a plume of steam erupting from its trunk. It took a step forward, then another, a show of dominance. It was a warning. Kale didn't back down. Enraged by this insolence, the mammoth lowered its head and charged. And in that moment, Kale did something that defied all instinct. He didn't run. He didn't throw his spear. He dropped to one knee, jammed the butt of his heavy spear into a frozen crack in the earth, and angled the flint tip directly at the charging beast's chest, turning his body into a living bulwark. He became a tiny rock bracing against a tidal wave of flesh and bone. The impact was cataclysmic. It wasn't the strength of his arm that drove the spear home, but the unstoppable momentum of the mammoth itself. The 9-foot spear was swallowed by the beast, the razor-sharp flint point doing unimaginable damage inside. The mammoth let out a sound of pure shock and pain, a high-pitched trumpet of agony that ripped through the air. It stumbled, its charge broken, and collapsed under its own immense weight. It fell to the snow, kicking and thrashing, its lifeblood staining the white ground a brilliant, shocking crimson. The herd, which had been grazing peacefully, erupted into chaos. The matriarch wheeled around, her own bellow of alarm and rage echoing across the plain. The other mammoths turned as one, their collective gaze fixing on the single, tiny figure standing over their fallen kin. They saw Kale, standing in the blizzard, his spear gone, armed with nothing but the impossible fact of what he had just done. And for the first time, in the collective consciousness of the greatest beasts to walk the Ice Age, a new and terrible emotion was born. It wasn't just anger. It wasn't just confusion. It was fear. They saw this small, fragile creature, and they saw the impossible. They saw a being that could kill a giant, not with the strength of a pack, but with the power of a single, brilliant, terrifying mind. The matriarch stared at Kale, a long, tense moment of understanding passing between them. Then, with a low rumble, she turned, gathered her panicked herd, and led them away at a thunderous pace, leaving their dead and the lone hunter behind. Kale didn't stand there as a conqueror. He stood trembling, not from the cold, but from the enormity of his act. He had faced down a god and survived. He had brought home a mountain of meat that would save his people. But he had also done something more. The story of his stand would become a legend, told around fires for 1,000 generations. Of course, the details would change. The blizzard would become fiercer, the mammoth larger, the hunter braver. But the core of the story, its essential truth, would remain. It's the story of a paradigm shift. The moment a thinking predator learned it could outwit a powerful prey. It's a legend that symbolizes the dawn of a new era, one where human ingenuity begins to reshape the world. Real mammoth hunting was a collaborative effort, a testament to community. But the legend of the lone hunter is a testament to the individual spirit, to that spark of innovation that can change everything. It's a story about the day we stopped being just another animal hiding from the thunder and became the ones who forged the lightning. The mammoths are gone now, their stories left only in bone and myth. Their extinction was a complex process, likely driven by a warming climate that shrank their grassland habitat, with pressure from human hunting hastening their decline. But the spirit of that lone hunter, that spark of courage, ingenuity, and unbreakable will in the face of impossible odds, that's the legacy they left us. It's the legend we carry in our blood. If you found this journey into the mythic past interesting, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the lost legends and forgotten histories that shaped our world. Let us know in the comments what other legends you'd like to see brought to life. Thanks for watching.